In this next episode, Batman and Robin are plagued by the Penguin, that nefarious bird of prey.
Holy arch enemy!
Right, old chum? But the side of law and order will triumph in the end.
Maybe we shouldn't be so sure of ourselves.
Stay tuned.
So far, we have seen outside the annual Gotham City charity luncheon, a different kind of charity, and a different kind of hero, the Penguin. Penguin, a civic-minded citizen. Holy turnabouts! Something's fishy. Mayor Linseed, what was it? Penguin for mayor. He couldn't possibly win. Oh, yes, he could. Disaster for Gotham City. Only one hope. Batman for mayor. The Penguin campaign in high gear. Penguin posters everywhere. Batman discussed the issues to sympathetic supporters, while Penguin issued champagne and other goodies. The caked candidate talked to the voters, but these voters wanted him out of the race. Robin, a political liability. Holy soap suds. An acid bath that could eat them clean to the bone. And a deadly set of scales. The waddling Politico arrives to quack. Hang on for just one searing minute.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and you know what? It's election time, and we've got some interesting candidates up for election this time in Gotham City. It's not Mayor Linseed. No. We have some interesting candidates, and in order to present these candidates correctly, we need to have a commentator here on the political scene. So I brought in someone special this time around. He's a writer, he's an editor, he's written and edited numerous comic books, short stories, novellas. He's also currently the senior editor for Time magazine for kids. So perhaps they are also, I don't know, have you done political issues of the magazine for the kids there? Let me introduce him here, Mr. Glenn Greenberg. How you doing, Glenn?
Holy debut, Batman! I'm doing fine, John. How are you?
Good. So, when you do the Time magazine, have you done special political issues?
Well, sure. Before Time magazine for kids, I used to work at Scholastic News, which is basically the competition. And so I've covered, about 3 presidential elections. And the only reason why I haven't covered one at Time for Kids yet is because it was at Scholastic News at the time. So, yeah, we've covered presidential elections, and, we cover what's going on in Ukraine. I'm sure at some point we'll have to cover what's going on with ISIS. So, yeah, we do get into that kind of stuff. We get into more national politics than local, but, yeah, we do cover politics, actually.
See, so, folks, we have someone here ready to discuss our 2 episodes, Hizzoner the Penguin and Dishonor the Penguin. These aired nicely enough right around election time, November 2nd and 3rd of 1966. But before we get into it, Glenn, let me ask you, what is it about Batman 66 that appeals to you that you'd even want to appear on a podcast talking about it?
Well, the TV show is what introduced me to Batman in the first place. I discovered it when it was on reruns on Channel 11 here in New York City. And the color, the action, the villains, the over-the-topness really pulled me in. I must have been around 4 or 5 years old. And so that's how I discovered Batman. And then a short time later, I discovered in my older brother's closet Batman comic books. And I was like, wow, he's in comic books too?
Yes.
And And that's how I discovered it. And, you know, up until the point where I was about, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, I would watch that show faithfully every day when it was on in syndication. It was like my Star Trek before Star Trek became Star Trek to me, you know?
And to this day, it's still, I mean, would you say it holds up for you, or at least brings back fond memories?
It definitely brings back fond memories. You know, as somebody who, you know, shifted to the comic books after discovering the show, yeah, I mean, it's very much its own thing. It's very much of its time, and it's very much of its own particular style. So holding up, I would say, you know, it doesn't hold up, I would say, the way Star Trek does, or maybe some of the better episodes of, say, The $6 Million Man, which I think still, you know, are you know, some of the really great episodes of that are still great today. But Batman, it's so idiosyncratic and so much, you know, its own thing that it's difficult to sort of categorize it. I do think it's very much of its time.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. And I'm hoping, though, that, and we'll, as we get into the discussion, we'll learn more and such. I'm going to lay my cards on the table. This is one of my more favorite episodes. This is one that, for the most part, still stands up because of the statements they're making. I mean, not necessarily the way they go about making some of the statements, but it still holds up as far as the message is concerned, and it's a strong message. I really do enjoy this one. I also have to say, because I've never been a big fan of the Penguin stories. Love Burgess Meredith. Loved him as the Penguin, but I don't think he was ever given the best material. I think this is his best one out of all of them he's done.
I don't disagree with you on that. It is the quintessential Penguin episode. And what really surprised me, I don't want to jump ahead, but what really surprised me about this episode is I didn't remember the show being this satirical and this biting in terms of its social commentary. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find that here.
It often wasn't this biting. I mean, it certainly took its jabs from time to time, but I don't think it ever really got this deep into a particular, you know, social topic or anything like that. And honestly, I think maybe if there had been more episodes like this in the second season, the show might have not had to stumble into the third the way it did.
I definitely agree with you, because this wasn't formulaic. It really was kind of set itself apart from the run-of-the-mill, you know, formulaic episodes that they were doing.
Absolutely. Let's get into it here. The episode opens, and we've got a robbery in progress. Seems like something normal, but except this time around, instead of the bad guy being part of the robbery, he's actually helped foiling it as Penguin stops a blind news server from being robbed at the corner there.
Please, won't somebody help me?
Foul play in our fair city!
That crooked quacker's up to no good.
Citizen Penguin to the rescue! You foul filcher of flies! I'll teach you to prey on helpless Gothamites!
Penguin, what's going on here? It's me you should be slugging.
What? Citizen Penguin molest a minion of the law? It's inconceivable.
And quickly the reports get into Commissioner Gordon, you know, that the Penguin's been doing all sorts of courageous acts all over the city, including saving a baby in an out-of-control carriage. I would have liked to have seen that scene, I think, more than the blind server.
Probably budget for the limitations on that.
Well, budget limitations, and probably the fact that, you know, Burgess Meredith would have had to do a little bit more action in the sense of running and stuff to catch the carriage.
Right.
But it is unusual, and of course, because of this, he has to quickly call in Batman and Robin for a consultation to find out what's going on here. And we get, you know, and again, it's not happened much in the second season, we get a Dick and Bruce scene in which Bruce is helping Dick rehearse for his lead role in Macbeth.
Hark! Is this a dagger which I see before me? The handle toward my hand? Come! Let me clutch thee. I have thee not, yet I see thee still.
It's very nice that you're playing the lead in Macbeth, Dick, but don't forget that you have a civics exam coming up.
Yeah.
Besides, Alfred may be getting uncomfortable.
Oh, not at all, sir. I've always had a fondness for Shakespeare.
I love this.
Right.
I love this. I mean, it really shows you how, I don't know, God love him. Burt Ward was the perfect Dick Grayson. He was the perfect Robin. I still think out of all the Robins, as far as Dick Grayson, he stands out. But, unless he was doing it on purpose, in which case, bravo to him. He's terrible as Macbeth.
Yeah, I would tend to think that was intentional. That's great. Otherwise, why didn't he Bruce Wayne to help him, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the English teacher in me, who also my favorite Shakespeare play is Macbeth, I loved it. I love the fact that also, in a way, Macbeth, his whole story is he'll do anything to hold his crown once he gets it. And Penguin, after a while, when he's starting to lose his power, resorts, and we'll get to it later, he resorts to underhandedness to get what, he wants.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And did you notice, I don't know how much of the series you've seen in recent years and such, this was an unusual camera angle because the whole thing was shot from, and I'll say stage left. If we were watching, it would be our right-hand side on the screen. The camera is pointing from the right-hand side, and so everything is at a weird angle. It's not straightforward. The desk and in the background is the bookcase and such, because we've got this scene of Dick on the floor and such and having to get up. So they had to move things around a little bit as far as the camera positioning. And they'd done this a few weeks earlier where they did it from the left-hand side. Now they're doing it from the right to sort of make it, I guess, a little bit more interesting visually.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. because one of the things we've been commenting on is how they're varying things up so that it doesn't seem so routine. We constantly are always saying, villain commits crime, Gordon calls them in they come, and then off we go on. And there's a formula. But the producers, it seems to me, both visually and to a certain extent, a few weeks ago we had John Champion on and we were talking about Liberace. Bruce and Dick don't show up for nearly 20 minutes into the episode.
Yeah, they were more willing to shake things up back then.
They were willing to shake it up. I don't think it's fair to say it was always formulaic. I think there were things that were different. And, of course, the fact that, as I said, Dick and Bruce, we're getting a scene with them. A lot of these episodes, instead, what would happen is we jump right to Batman and Robin, just instead quickly making their way to the bat poles because we wanted to get to the action, because we wanted more Batman. And to a certain extent, that hurt Adam West and Burt Ward, not giving them a chance to be Bruce and Dick and just act without, masks on.
Very true. Yeah, that's a really good insight.
Yeah. Once we get through the credits, we open with the two of them now actually in the elevator heading up to Police Commissioner Gordon's office. First time we ever see them in the elevator. We've seen them outside it in a couple of episodes, but now they're riding up.
Did you hear those rumors in the lobby? The Penguin running for mayor.
It's a free country, Robin.
It won't be if he's elected. Besides, I thought convicted felons were barred from holding any official office.
I suspect Penguin has done his civics homework well, Robin, and has discovered that paragraph 34A of the city charter has never been officially repealed. It specifically allows convicted criminals to run for public office.
Holy disaster area.
I don't think there's any danger of the Penguin being elected, Robin. The people of Gotham City are not as simple-minded as he might think. 13, please.
And it's a great conversation for a number of reasons. I mean, first off, the whole thing that there's a law that allows crooks to run.
Right. Yeah.
I would have been fine with it if Batman had explained why. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, in the Batman universe, obviously not everything makes sense, but Batman always explained why it didn't make sense.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of times when these stories have like this kind of lapse in logic kind of thing, I've learned to like attribute it to they probably did shoot it, but it got edited for time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was odd. It's sort of like, yeah, I picked up on that too. It's sort of like, oh, okay, I mean, that's fine if you want to establish that, but give me a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I did like the fact that, already the Penguin is working his campaign because as Batman makes that comment about the citizens not being fooled so easily and they step out of the elevator, there's everybody in the elevator with their Penguin buttons and the doors closed to Penguin bumper stickers.
Well, Batman, he also has that line, most politicians are honest servants of the people.
Yes.
And again, I mean, yes, I said a few minutes ago that the show is very much of its time, But boy, is that a timeless line in terms of the irony.
Yes, it is. It is.
You know, I mean, it's almost kind of sad to think that, you know, because you know that the show, the line was meant as you know, to be ironic, and the thought that, you know, what, almost 50 years ago, things weren't much better back then, you know.
Right.
So,
well, you know, it's funny because we say honest and such. You think about what we look at as a dishonest politician, though, today compared to maybe back then. Right. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being a little naive there and such, that it's 10 times worse now. In many we haven't gotten better in our politics. We've actually gotten worse.
Much worse.
Yeah.
That's why it's sort of like, you know, there is this sort of, you know, innocence and naivete to the show, and even they're saying, you know, basically, politicians are crooks.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like it's like you want to talk to them and say, you have no idea how good you have it comparatively, you know.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you one thing. In the office, they bring in these 3 pollsters, you know, because Mayor Linseed, he wants to quit. He wants to drop out of the race and all. He's not going to win with Penguin, and he brings in the pollsters to prove his point. He brings in Gallus, Rupert, and Trendeck. Okay, I get Gallus is Gallup, and I'm assuming Trendeck is supposed to be a play on the word trend, but Rupert, is that just a name they threw out, or am I missing something there?
You know, I looked it up. I got the other 2 also. I wasn't sure who the third one was. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, it could very well be that it's just a name.
I certainly got Gallus. I mean, they kind of hit you over the head with that one.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe even in the sense that they just did it because they didn't want to be too obvious. They could have just had one person come in and say he was Gallus, and it would have been just too obvious.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, obviously, Mayor Linseed is supposed to be Mayor Lindsay of New York,
right?
From that, so I mean, that was pretty easy to pick up too. I don't know. That's a really good question.
And I like the fact, because it does say something to the effect that, you know, these pollsters work for the candidates, not, you know, really for the people, because one moment they're there they've got Linseed for mayor, and then when they show up at Penguin's office, they've got their briefcases flipped over and it's now Penguin for mayor.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. That was very funny.
Yeah. Now, Linseed wants Batman to take his place in the race because he feels that Batman has a chance. And this was something I thought was interesting. And it's going to be this way throughout most of the episode. Robin is unusually subdued. While all the others are cheering for Batman as he struggles with the idea of, should I not? It's a great responsibility. It's a bit much. I don't know. But when he finally says yes, they're all hooray. And Robin's just looking very quiet, very subdued. I mean, he'll make comments throughout the episode saying, hey, you know, we should have a band, or we should do this. But nothing in the sense of really getting excited about this, really. And I'm wondering if he's supposed to be symbolically, you know, our youth who are just like, yeah, elections, who cares?
I kind of saw Robin as Batman's, like, campaign manager, you know? And so the campaign manager, stereotypically, is usually, he's the serious one. He's the subdued one where the candidate is supposed to shine. And that's kind of like the way I saw it, is that Robin was sort of like, you know, the serious, focused campaign manager.
Okay, and to take that idea then also, because usually the campaign manager is always pushing for more, which Robin did try to do, but he, though, at least totally respects Batman's position and won't for one moment, even though he wants it, because like at one point there, I think it's Commissioner Gordon says, you know, couldn't we put a little zip in this or something? Can we do? And Robin's like, no, this is it. This is the way Batman wants to run it. He wants to present it. I'm making sure he does. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you could say, yeah, he is campaign manager and just making sure it all stays just the way Batman wants to be presented. I don't know. I always thought the campaign manager, but then again, this would be, you know, Batman universe logic anyway, is that, you know, Robin's actually listening to everything Batman's telling him, whereas the campaign manager sometimes might go off on a limb and do something to sort of push things along a little without always the candidate's knowledge.
Yeah, well, that was certainly not Robin. At least not this Robin.
Right.
This Robin did whatever he was told, which probably didn't make him a great campaign manager, but it certainly made him a good sidekick.
Yes.
So, yeah. And plus the fact that just getting back to Gallus for a second,
Sure.
I can't remember the actor's name, but he was terrific. I loved him on every TV show he appeared on in the 70s. I wish I could remember his name because he was a very funny character actor.
Hang on a second. I can find it here. Yeah, one of the things I loved about this whole episode, too, that also stood out is really it had a great guest cast.
Part 2 is even better.
Oh, Part 2 is even better, absolutely. George Firth.
George Firth, that's the guy's name. This guy, this guy always made me laugh whenever he would show up on a TV show. He was on The Odd Couple. If he wasn't on Bewitched, he should have been on Bewitched.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if he was, and if he wasn't on Bewitched, he was probably on I Dream of Jeannie.
yeah, George Firth. Yeah, he was hilarious.
Yeah. We cut to Penguin's headquarters where...
When we're through with this campaign, even Mayor Linseed will vote for me.
I wish I was old enough to vote for you, Mr. Penguin.
Don't worry, little one. You'll get your chance on my 4th term. Quick, the latest figures. How much of a lead do I have in the polls?
None.
None? Well, just 3 hours ago, you told me that I had 60% of the electorate.
That was a pre-Batman poll. Since Batman announced his candidacy,
55% favor Batman.
35% favor the Penguin. 7% are undecided.
And 3% are still backing Harry Goldwinter, the monarchist candidate.
So, old Pointy Ears has thrown his cowl into the ring, huh? Good! Once and for all, I'll settle matters with that masked moron. And when I finish with him, he won't garner enough votes to be elected dog catcher. Fellow workers, double the assessments, triple the size of the posters, quadruple the number of campaign buttons. We'll give the voters of this city the kind of campaign that they want. Plenty of girls and bands and slogans and lots of hoopla. But remember, no politics. Issues confuse people. See a big smile, hearty handshake, a very catchy campaign song. That's the way to win an election.
I love this because this is really the whole meat of the story. It's like, you know what? Our political process isn't anymore about what's really important. It's pretty much a popularity poll.
Right. And what I thought, and again, this is probably with 2020 hindsight, but the fact that, Batman is being portrayed as a stiff, and that is just so unthinkable, especially now, that Batman is the boring one, I thought it was an interesting portrayal that the writers came up with, that Batman would be the one that nobody's interested in. I mean, he wears a mask, for crying out loud, Funny, because if you do go back and you read a lot of the comic books that the show is based on, Batman is very straight-laced. I mean, he's very cerebral, and the mind always focused on details and that kind of thing. I would never quite describe him as a bore, and it's just funny that's what the writers of the episode kind of decided to latch on to, is that, people are going to be more interested in the Penguin than Batman. I mean, just the way he's been portrayed for the last 30, 40 years, be unthinkable.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, and that's, that plays up with the whole thing with Robin and such, where he's like, let's have a band, let's do, Batman's like, no, we just stick to the issues. It's that whole straight-laced, and the fact is, straight-laced is boring. It's why, they feel the need, from time to time to, give Superman that little oomph by suddenly having him a little edgier, because he's the all-American Boy Scout, and that gets tiresome after a while.
So let's have him break his enemies' necks.
Yes, exactly.
But you know what? I would say that it's really interesting, because I would say that this episode, or this pair of episodes, had a major impact on Tim Burton, because not only did he lift the idea of Penguin running for mayor for Batman Returns, but also Tim Burton, it was very clear he found Batman to be a colossal bore and was much more interested in the villains. And that's kind of like the theme that's in this episode. And I think, I don't know if Tim Burton ever watched the TV series. I don't know if he ever said he did. But if he did, I would say this had a major impact on him.
Well, I don't know if he actually watched the series, but there are definitely elements of the show that sort of creep in, or maybe they're homages within the movies, the first two movies anyway. I mean, after one could still argue also that 3 and 4 is just like the TV series sliding down into just complete insanity after a while.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, and when it comes to the Penguin, out of all the 3 villains he did, Joker, Catwoman, and Penguin, probably the Penguin is closest to the TV series version. I would say.
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, definitely, certainly the closest in comparison. Yeah. I don't see Burgess Meredith biting the heads off fishes.
No, but there are little things like there was an earlier Penguin episode where he's eating sardines from a jar and they're doing a close-up and it's just the nastiest looking thing. And I remember there's a scene in Batman Returns where Danny DeVito is eating, I don't know if it was sardines, but it was like some sort of fish or something. And again, it's all the close-up on the mouth and the teeth and the playing up that, this Penguin, it's a lot more obvious in the movies than in the TV show, but there is a sort of animalistic nature to the Penguin.
Interesting. I don't remember that. I never saw any kind of animalistic nature to Burgess Meredith. He always seemed more of an aristocrat, but I'll have to check out that episode.
Yeah, it's just really close up. He's sitting there eating, and there's no sense of cleaning himself as he eats. He's on the phone talking and stuff. And, I mean, again, not as like DeVito where he's devouring the fish or something like that. If I remember correctly, the scene. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. But I wonder if, Burton, like I say, if you say, did he watch it? Maybe these are the little things that suddenly he's like, oh, that's a weird image. And then boom.
Right.
Suddenly he plays it up more in the movie.
Movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go back, like you said, Batman's headquarters. It's all quiet. There's nobody about. Batman's looking. He's looking at these little black and white posters, and he's going, "These are just fine." And Robin's just like, "Can we just do this? Can we?" No, we're gonna play it all straight. But I love this because we get our one Aunt Harriet scene in this episode where she shows up offering to fund his campaign and help fund it. Now, of course, we don't know how much money it is, but it's certainly enough that Robin's eyes bug out when he sees the check and such. And so there's a bit of an irony there because I don't know if this is Aunt Harriet's own money or if it's money that Bruce has given her. So, Bruce could be funding his own campaign. Which...
That's what I was thinking.
Oh. So the campaign begins, and as we come to the end of an act here, we see a Penguin supporter vandalizing Batman's poster. Now, did you see something wrong with this end scene that I saw? The guy is vandalizing the poster. The cop sees him, rushes up, and the guy runs off. And what does the cop do? He pulls a gun to shoot a vandalizer. I'm like, what?
What city is this? Yeah, that was bizarre.
Yeah, that was extremely bizarre. I'm like, what's going on here?
I mean, all of a sudden, it's like Taxi Driver, New York, Yeah, that was really, really odd. I wonder what they were trying to say about, I guess, police brutality tactics in Gotham at the time.
Yeah, I'm like thinking, is this Gotham City or L.A.?
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, that was really, really strange.
Wow. But it does lead into the next scene, the opening of the next act, and we get this. I love this because today we wouldn't laugh at it as much, but it's hysterically funny back then. Batman won't kiss babies.
Hi, how are you? Hello, Batman. We came down for your rally, and we're with you all the way.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
And we brought our babies for you to kiss.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
What?
It's a rather unsanitary habit, you see. Babies that small are very susceptible to germs.
My child unsanitary?
That's not what I meant.
A politician that won't kiss babies? That's outrageous.
I admit it's rather unusual, but...
It's more than unusual. It's downright suspicious.
It's more than suspicious. It's downright criminal. What can you expect from a fake politician like Batman? Where the little darling? Darling, absolutely darling.
I'll tell you something. Before I watched this episode for the podcast, I hadn't seen this show in, I don't even want to tell you how many years. This was the one scene that I remembered the most vividly from this episode after all those years, is that Batman wouldn't kiss the baby. but the Penguin would because, you know, he was afraid of, like, germs and everything.
Yes.
This is the scene that stayed with me for all these years. Whenever I thought of, oh, yeah, the episode where the Penguin ran for mayor, that's the one where Batman wouldn't kiss the baby and the people. He was trying to protect the baby, and the voters got mad at Batman.
Yes. And what's even funnier is, because I didn't catch this until this time around watching it, Penguin kisses the baby, and he leans in with the cigarette in his hand while he's still kissing
Yeah.
He doesn't put the cigarette over to the side or anything. He leans in, cigarette in hand, into the carriage to kiss the baby. So ashes are probably dropping on the baby.
Well, back then they thought smoking was good for you. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And I love his whole line, how he talks about how he's loving this campaign because he can totally be himself with all his dirtiest tricks, and it's all legal.
Absolutely. Yeah, that gets into the satire that we were talking about before. It's very, very satirical.
Yes, it's very satirical, and it just, you know, this is what really politics is like, folks. It's not really. Yeah. We're not really making much of a, you know, stretch here. It's just other than the guy's dressed as a penguin.
In that sense, it's probably the most educational episodes of the series. You know, because like, hey kids, here's what politics is really like. You sure you want to be president someday?
Yes.
Yeah.
We get, you know, Batman's headquarters.
As candidate for mayor of Gotham City, I hope that this campaign will be a sober discussion of basic issues. I'm glad to see so many citizens who are concerned about their city's welfare and interested in its problems. Governing the great
Batman would put a little more zip in his speech.
crime.
Chief.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner.
Is a blot on the
Couldn't you get Batman to agree to one little brass band?
Batman feels that a political campaign should not be a vaudeville show, Mayor Linseed.
But this isn't a political campaign. This is a funeral service.
I know my opponent is having a rally down the street. I hope that he, too, will address himself to basic...
And I have to say, the guy who played Mayor Linseed, yeesh, not one of the best performances.
No, but, you know, again, that might be just the fact that, you know, he's supposed to be that boring or that, I don't know. Although
I just figured he was friends with the producer, and that's how he got the gig.
Yeah, I don't remember anything of his performances standing out as compared to the guy who played Warden Crichton, who I always look forward to seeing whenever he was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he always had a certain passion to him about his revolutionary rehabilitation techniques. And while we've got this going on over in the Batman headquarters there, this really dull speech with, I think there was like maybe 6 people in the audience tops, we cut to Penguin's headquarters, and it's a full-on party. I mean, he's got everything. He's got Paul Revere and the Raiders playing. He's got a belly dancer. He's got champagne flowing. He's got dancing girls, and he himself steps out and does a little rap.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing I was wondering is, what did Paul Revere and the Raiders get out of this? Because it's like, you know, they didn't even get to perform one of their own songs.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and they were like a pretty happening band at the time. So to just have them come out and you know, play the traditional election music was like, I wonder what they thought they were getting out of this, other than you know, just exposure. Maybe that was enough for them.
Well, yeah, maybe that. I mean, you know, because a lot of people wanted to be on this show, and they're one of the few singing acts who appeared on the show.
Champagne for everybody!
Hooray for Penguin!
Hooray for Penguin!
Hooray for me!
Vote for Penguin, yes sirree. He's the bird for you and me. Clean up Gotham, 1, 2, 3. So cast your vote for Pengy.
Friends and fellow Gothamites, the Penguin platform is simple. Extremism in defense of vice, moderation in pursuit of virtue. Penguin Party stands for mother. Country. The flag.
It's such a pleasure to hear plain, honest talk from a candidate instead of the usual political mumbo-jumbo.
So
Right,
they have something up on a lot of, because you wonder, you think about it, I mean, there were a lot of acts who were up and coming or popular, and I wonder if they ever tried to get on the series or if they ever cared to get on the series.
Yeah, I thought I heard something about Sinatra wanted to do the series, and that for some reason it never happened, but I thought I heard somewhere that he wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Well, he did visit the set on one occasion, and it was around this time, but I forget if it was particularly this episode or one of the other episodes, but it was around this time that Sinatra did visit the set.
Oh, wow. Could you imagine had he been on that show? Oh, boy, that would have been something.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's so funny, too, because when you think of what they never got to accomplish and what they were thinking about in terms of, like, just ideas off the top of their head, including having Clint Eastwood playing Two-Face.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, there was talk of Clint Eastwood being Two-Face on the show.
Now, was this the Two-Face episode that Harlan Ellison was going to write?
That, I believe, was what the plan was. I think was that they were going to get Clint Eastwood in to be, from Harlan's script, but then, the whole thing just sort of wasn't done, or I don't know. I'm not entirely certain of the whole story of that whole thing there. And then, of course, we also had False Face, so...
Yeah.
Which was another thing, too, because they never brought False Face back because the mask on him was just too scary. He looked like a burn victim.
Yeah, I loved False Face.
I loved him. I did, too. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll find out a little bit more about the Harlan episode because, DC's putting out a comic book version of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I keep meaning to get a hold of... Harlan's got a series of books with his scripts that were never produced.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those books has the original script for the Batman episode he proposed.
Oh, wow.
And I got to get a hold of it, but they're like $50 each or something, but that's one of my wish lists.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I'll read the comic book.
So we come towards the end of the episode here where Batman and Robin are invited to speak at the Grand Order of Occidental Nighthawks. And it's funny because when they got the invitation, Batman looked a little suspicious at the whole thing.
Right.
He even says, he starts going, Goon. Yeah, right. But then he gets there, and he looks totally oblivious. He seems surprised that they're caught in a trap.
Welcome, Batman, the Grand Order of Occidental Nighthawks.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to the voters.
Our members can hardly wait.
Those faces look awfully familiar, Batman.
You're right, Robin. I recognize 3 of them from the Gotham City police files.
I smell a rat.
2 rats, Boy Wonder. And guess who the cats are?
They go to the headquarters. They're in the cave.
Yes.
Lit by torches. And the guys are wearing black shirts with white letters that say Goon. And neither Batman nor Robin, it occurs to neither of them that something is up until they recognize one of the thugs.
Yes.
And this is supposed to be the world's greatest detective.
Enough of the fancy umbrella play. Since you're so eager to discuss the weighty issues in the campaign, Batman, we've fixed up a little surprise for you.
Now, I can forgive Commissioner Gordon and Chief O'Hara for not realizing that they're wearing penguin stickers on their bodies, I mean, people come over, they slap you on the back. Hey, Commissioner, doing a great job. They, person leaves a sticker on the back. How would they know? This is supposed to be the world's greatest detective. And again, I thought, he was suspicious. But it's clear from the point where until they recognize, I remember that guy. We put him away once. No idea that these were the Joker's goons. I had to shake my head at that one.
Yeah. So, of course, the bat fight breaks out. And, it's sad because for some reason Robin in this entire two-parter is getting the short shrift. He's kind of subdued. There's not a whole lot of holies out of him or real big exclamations. And what happens in the midst of the fight? He gets caught so that Batman has to surrender.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
He really gets a bum deal, and he's going to get a bum deal in the next episode as well.
Exactly, yeah. Although I do think this was the first time we've ever seen fencing with umbrellas on television.
I'm trying to remember if one of the other earlier Penguin... I think one of the earlier Penguin episodes, they pull out the umbrellas, too.
Really?
Yeah.
And they fence with that one, too?
I believe so.
Well, then the show's already repeating itself.
So Batman surrenders, and the two are trussed up and placed in the trap. They're put in this giant, scale where Batman and Robin are on one side, suspended over an acid bath, while, this ice is being melted, and as the ice melts, they'll slowly lower into the acid.
Holy bat braves! An acid bubble bath for Batman and Robin. What a way to lose an election! Batman, don't just lie there. Do something. Whatever you do, don't miss tomorrow's bubbling finish. Same time, same Bat channel.
And they're left to their doom as we come to the end of part 1. Now, one of the other things I've said about these episodes is that in the early episodes, we had the bat traps that were traps of circumstance. In season 2, we get more of the big dynamic, giant scale, giant hourglass with the sand falling on them. But sometimes when they get out of these traps, I sometimes think it's a bit of a cheat. And it's like, oh, wow, wouldn't you know it, Alfred had, treated Batman's costume for acid so that, Batman could just throw himself in there and come out unharmed.
I thought that made perfect sense. I thought this was probably one of the best, solutions to a cliffhanger that I remembered being done on the show. It would make perfect sense. If this is a guy who's got shark repellent in his utility belt, this is a guy who, tries to account for any possibility that he might find himself in. So yeah, it would make perfect sense for the costumes to be acid-free. The question it raises is, why does he let Robin run around with short sleeves and short pants that expose most of his skin?
Well, that's true. I'll give you that one. Yeah, there you go. That's true. For that matter, he has no real head cover.
That's right. It seems to me Batman cared about Robin, but only to a certain degree.
Right.
Because that costume, you can make Robin's costume as acid-free as possible, but he's gonna lose all the skin on his arms and legs if he's ever exposed to acid.
Mm-hmm. It's funny though, because again, my childhood memories of Batman were always that he would pull something out of the utility belt to save the day, unless of course the belt was taken away. Then he would be, clever and such. But as I'm going through the series, I'm not seeing that many episodes where the utility belt saves the day as much as we like to seem to think it does.
Yeah, I guess the few times that they did it were just so, memorable that you just kind of remember. It's like the same way, everybody thinks Captain Kirk ended up with a girl in every single episode. It was only really a handful, or that he was always violating the Prime Directive. He never violated the Prime Directive. It's our collective memory, maybe the one or two times that it was done was so memorable that you think that, it happened in every episode. But, you're actually, the fact that you bring that up, I always thought that, he always managed to pull something out of his utility belt. So you're enlightening me as well.
Well, he gets Robin out, and, Penguin learns that they've escaped. Batman decides, though, because they're supposed to have a debate, Batman decides to go through with the debate because he really can't offer any proof of the connection between Penguin and Goon. And they need to go through with the process of the election and such. So we come to the debate, and there's Batman on one side, Penguin on the other.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? Station KGOM is very happy and proud to bring you a debate between the candidates who are running for mayor of Gotham City. I believe the Penguin will lead off the debate.
Friends and fellow citizens, I want to give you my solemn word that there will be no mudslinging in this campaign, unless, of course, my opponent slings it. But I intend to stick to the issues. Now, what are the issues? There is only one. Batman. Who is he? Who is this acrobatic clown who somersaults around Gotham City in a ridiculous costume? I suggest that behind that mask, Batman is, in reality, a dangerous criminal. Why else does he wear a mask? Why else does he conceal his past? Would you think about that a moment, my friends? Whenever you've seen Batman, who's he with? Criminals. That's who. You look in the old newspapers. Every picture of Batman shows him with thugs and with thieves and hobnobbing with crooks. Whereas my pictures show me always surrounded by whom? By the police. I am associate of the law.
Listen to those lies. Oh, that penguin. He's as crooked as a warped shillelagh.
Now, which man do you want to run Gotham City? A man like myself who is always in the company of the law? Or a man like Batman who rubs elbows with the worst elements of this city and who is undoubtedly a desperate criminal himself? Think about it without rancor. And remember this, no mudslinging in this campaign.
Opens up right off the bat with the one thing probably most people, didn't think as much about back in those days. We'd be the first ones now today. He's wearing a mask. Do we know who this guy is? Right. You know who I am. You see me, but who is this man? But sadly, when Batman tries to respond, Penguin has taken control of the sound system, and he starts having his Penguin, election music start playing.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, no, it was a really good point to make. You know, that you see my face. He's wearing a mask. Who do you trust? I thought that was really good.
Yeah. But before anything can be done to, remedy the sound or continue the debate, we get the news that there's a robbery of jewels at the convention hall. So Batman, Robin, and Penguin race to the convention hall. And when we cut to it...
This is Walter Klondike in the lobby of Gotham City's convention hall, where one of the greatest robberies of all time is taking place right now. The two candidates for mayor have just gone inside to help subdue the cutthroat gang that has kept Gotham City's police force at bay. Oh, Chief O'Hara. Well, Chief, how does it look to you now?
Grim. That's how it looks. I only hope that Batman and Robin get out of there alive.
How about the Penguin?
Him? Why, that dirt...
Thank you very much, Chief O'Hara. We now switch you to Chet Chumley inside Convention Hall. Come in, Chet.
Thank you, Walter. This is Chet Chumley inside Convention Hall. From our post here high above the floor, we can see the battle spread before us. And Batman, Robin, and the Penguin are struggling furiously with the thugs who are attempting to make off with over $1 million in jewels.
We get, this is probably one of the best scenes in the entire episode, is this fight with Batman, Robin, and Penguin against all these goons. There must have been about 10 or 12 of them. Penguin himself is taking on 3 or 4 of them single-handedly. And again, this is what I was saying before about poor Robin. Very early on, he gets knocked out of the game by just being knocked out and dragged away.
Well, that's all for Robin. Just leaves the two candidates. We switch now to David Dooley down on the convention floor. Come in, David.
Thank you, Chet. This is David Dooley on the convention floor. I'm going to maneuver over to Batman to see if I can get him to say a few words to us. Is there anything at all you'd like to say to the television audience, Batman? Of course, Batman, a little bit later. Thank you. This is David Dooley on the convention floor. I switch you back now to Chet Chumley. Take it away, Chet.
Thank you, David. This is Chet Chumley high above the convention floor. The battle is raging hot and heavy below us. Wait a minute.
What I also loved was all of the famous people that were part of that scene.
Yes.
I loved Walter Klondike broadcasting while he's smoking a pipe. I don't know if Walter Cronkite ever... Do you happen to know, did Walter Cronkite ever smoke a pipe during one of his news broadcasts?
Oh, yeah, no, he, if I remember correctly, famously during the John F. Kennedy assassination.
Batman got one. And now it looks like the Penguin is about to get one. He did. Score one more for the Penguin. Well, it looks like the Penguin is rolling up quite a lead, but it's still a tight contest. I think that David is maneuvered over toward the Penguin now, so we switch to the convention floor. And David Dooley. Come in, David.
Thank you, Chet. This is David Dooley on the convention floor. I'm going to see now if we can get a few words from the other candidates. Is there anything you'd like to say to our television audience, Penguin?
Oh, I'm very busy. Right now, David, as you can see, bringing law and order back to Gotham City. I always have a few words to say to the voters, even when my own life is in danger. Where's the camera? Ladies and gentlemen, friends of Gotham City, you've seen both of the candidates in action, and you can decide yourself which of us is better able to run this glorious city.
But now you seem to be putting more thugs out of business than Batman. How do you explain that?
Proves that I'm right. Batman is in cahoots with the criminal elements. He's got one foot in the underground.
Thank you for your opinion, Penguin.
I thought it was adorable, the Walter Cronkite character. Chet Chumley,
yes,
supposed to be Chet Huntley, played by Dennis James. I remember him co-hosting the Cerebral Palsy telethon in New York City for years.
Yes.
Obviously, David Dooley is supposed to be David Brinkley.
Yep.
That was Alan Ludden.
Yes, Alan Ludden from Password fame.
Password. And probably, one of the best Odd Couple episodes of all time.
What a man. What a man. The Penguin has certainly gained some political mileage today.
Batman, are you all right?
There were just too many for me, Robin. But somehow the Penguin was knocking them down left and right.
That whole thing was a setup, Batman. That waddling weasel planned it.
Perhaps, but I'm afraid we can't prove it. I guess nobody likes a loser.
Well, that's the story from Convention Hall. Good night, David.
Good night, Chet.
And I remember as a kid, because it was around the time I started watching Batman. Also, Dennis James was also host of the nighttime Price is Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's right. Yeah. Wow.
And I would be remiss, especially for all you Kevin Lauderdale fans out there, if you remember Kevin being on the show. Klondike was played by Don Wilson, who was a regular on the Jack Benny Show, a show particularly near and dear to Kevin's heart. So I wanted to bring that up as well.
He was terrific.
Yeah, he was.
He was really good, and I just loved the notion of the reporters trying to interview Batman and the Penguin during the fight scene.
Well, I love it because Batman doesn't really get a chance to say much because he's caught up in the fight and such at the time. But the Penguin manages, there's like that pause, and he actually can get right up into the camera and mug for it.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. And I don't remember the show doing stuff like that on a regular basis. So I thought that was different, at least from my memories of the show.
No, it was definitely different. I mean, this whole episode, really has that difference because the fact is that if you think about it, there's no detecting going on at all. Right. Whether that detecting is actual hunting for clues or even if it's just a simple matter of chasing the villain around town. We've actually had this whole story so far, with the exception of a break for a cliffhanger, we've had a campaign going on.
Right. These episodes did so much more with the whole idea of Penguin running for mayor than Batman Returns ever did. I mean, it really, this took the idea and really ran with it. It's sort of like they could have dropped the whole mayor plot line from the movie and it wouldn't have changed pretty much anything. I just love the fact that they took the idea and they really ran with it. They milked it for all it was worth and got a lot of good biting satire out of it.
Well, see, that's the thing. The movie Penguin running for mayor was a smokescreen. In this, Penguin wanted to be mayor.
Right.
This wasn't a smoke show. This wasn't this, and that's the other thing too. Because I've always said that some of the best episodes of Batman I like is where we don't really find out what the final plan is until nearly the end, when Batman finally figures it all out. Okay, there isn't a final plan. This is the plan. I want to be mayor. I'll do whatever it takes, right up to the very end, which we're coming up on. But it's like, you know, and yet still, I love this one. I also like the fact that, you know, Dennis James up top, because, you know, they're doing it like, I mean, it's the convention hall and there's a jewelry robbery going on, but they treat it like, you know, the fervor of, you know, an actual Democratic or Republican convention where, you know, we've got our reporter up top making commentary and such, and then down below we've got our reporters trying to interview the candidates and such as they go along.
Right.
And Dennis James keeping score over how many knockouts Batman and Penguin have.
I got a kick out of that. Yeah. Very much so, yeah.
And Penguin gets more goons, and in fact, in the end, you know, when they're all knocked out, it's Penguin by a landslide as far as number of bad guys knocked out.
Right.
And because of that whole show, Penguin gets a lead in the polls.
Yeah.
But I love this. Batman still, and this is the thing, Batman's faith is never shaken. He says, no, the citizens of Gotham will prevail. They'll figure things out, and they'll come around. It's not arrogance on his part, you know, that I'm better than him or anything like that. He just knows that the citizens are not going to be led by someone like Penguin.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you said, his faith in the people to make the right decision. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, looking at the show in, you know, with 20/20 hindsight, he looks ridiculously naive.
Well, he does. And he hasn't learned from some of, you know, the earlier episodes where the citizens have turned on him for various reasons. Like even the Archer episode at the beginning of the season, where when the Archer was tossing money to the citizens of Gotham, they were all like, woo! And even when Archer gets arrested, they bail him out. He misses all that. He forgets. But then again, that's also just a convention of the time where we didn't have that kind of continuity.
They're kind of like the citizens of Springfield on The Simpsons. They're just so easily misguided and easily led astray. The people of Gotham.
Yeah. I also liked because, you know, all right, I just said continuity, but now we get a little continuity of sorts because Penguin calls to taunt Batman and informs him that when he's elected mayor, Riddler's going to be commissioner. And
Joker's going to be chief of police.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That sent a chill down my fanboy spine.
Oh, sure. Anytime you get that kind of name dropping of other villains and stuff in the show, I remember the Ma Parker episode, you know, where Ma Parker's there and she's talking to all these crooks because they've taken over the prison, and Catwoman is among the crowd, and it's like, whoa, there's Catwoman. And Catwoman's first question is, wait a minute, though, Penguin and Joker are still in solitary. What's going to happen to them? And Ma Parker's like, well, when they learn who's boss, that's when I'll let them out.
I love the references to other characters that aren't appearing in the show, that refer to past episodes. I love that. I mean, and back then on shows, you know, the TV shows like that back then, it was very rare for them to do that. I think, you know, Star Trek only did it once or twice throughout the entire run of the original series, that they gave like a callback to a previous episode. So I love the fact that the Penguin was referring to, you know, all the two of the other most iconic characters from the show, and that he's kind of like, yeah, I'm buddies with these guys. I just love that was great. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Well, Batman's faith, though, in Gotham's citizens is not unfounded because Penguin gets word that Batman has now turned the tide in the polls, and he's slowly closing the gap and closing in on Penguin. So Penguin gets desperate and decides to kidnap the Board of Elections. If you don't have a Board of Elections, they can't count the votes. So he goes and has his goons do the kidnapping, and here's the big mistake in his whole plan. He just should have kidnapped them and let them be, but what does he do? He calls Batman to tell him he did it, and that he'll kill them if he's not declared the winner.
Right.
And I love the logic in all this because Batman's like, all right, we don't have time to have clues or you know, let's get to the Bat computer and figure out where he's keeping them. Batman just goes, Penguin spent so much money on his campaign, he can't have another hideout, so let's go back to Goon headquarters. I love that.
Yeah. There's so many great moments in this. I just love when the pollsters, when they're hanging from the wall. They just got these idiotic smiles on their faces.
I told you not to count those hobos down at the freight yards.
What about the 2 sword swallowers and the lady wrestler you turned in?
Nobody will ever listen to us again.
Don't worry. We can always get a job rating TV shows.
Well, they got the idiotic smiles, and what I love is, and again, it's another zing. It's like, what are we going to do now? Well, we could always go and rate television shows.
Right, yeah. I was like, okay.
This has just had a lot of biting commentary, and it was just sharp, and it was fast, and there's not a second wasted in this episode. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of episodes, especially in the second season so far, where we're like, okay, you got cheated because this scene didn't need to be there, and you could have played up this scene more. Nothing is wasted in this episode.
No, absolutely not. It doesn't feel padded at all. I will say that I think that part 2 is actually better than part 1.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you there. So off they go to Goon headquarters, and again, we get a big bat fight.
Oh, I'm gonna wring the city dry. I'm gonna pick the bones of Gotham City and throw the carcass to the Finks.
Aren't you being a little premature, Penguin?
How'd you find this place?
You goofed, that's how. And no good mayor ever goofs.
Particularly when he hasn't even been elected yet.
Yes, but I have the Board of Elections here. They can't have counted any more votes.
They didn't need to.
This is some sort of a trick, that's what it is. Some sort of a low, scurvy, underhanded, political sort of a trick. I'll have you reported to the Fair Campaign Practices Committee.
No, Pengy. You said we associated with criminals. So, here we are.
I forget. I don't think Penguin actually gets himself into the fight. I think he stays off to the side with one of the campaign girls this time.
Yeah, he's on the side watching with the blonde campaign worker, yeah.
I did like, well, I don't know if I liked it, but it was cute, I guess, was the very ending where...
I thought you bought the machine to turn out your campaign literature, Pengy. Look what it's turning out now.
I see it, and it's not literature.
I'm getting out of here before they package me. You'd better, too.
No! Batman wouldn't dare touch me. Think what it would do to his public image.
You know, basically they round them all up by tossing them into the campaign literature packing machine, so they're all boxed up ready to go.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm a candidate for the mayor of Gotham City. Now you lay hands on me, and I'll have the voters after you. Keep your distance! Keep your distance, I say! Keep your distance!
I think it's time for us to wrap up the election, Batman.
I take it you mean wrap up the candidate?
Oh, exactly.
I'm a political candidate!
I did like the whole thing at the end there. It's sort of a little bit of a comeuppance when Penguin comes rolling out and Batman and Robin come up to him. Batman takes the cigarette out of the cigarette holder in Penguin's mouth, breaks it.
He then puts the empty cigarette holder back in the Penguin's mouth.
Yes.
Which I thought was kind of like, you know, in your face kind of thing, which I thought was pretty cool.
Absolutely.
In case you're interested, Penguin, Batman won the election by an overwhelming margin. The votes were already counted when you kidnapped the board.
Fraud! It's a fraud, I say! I demand a recount!
Don't worry. You'll have another chance soon. The Convicts Committee for Clean Prison Government is having an election next week. You should arrive just in time to run for chairman.
And if you need any endorsements, just let us know.
I demand my constitutional right.
Batman wins the election, but, you know, being Batman, he's devoted his life to crime, so he resigns and Mayor Linseed gets to take over because Mayor Linseed was running as his lieutenant mayor.
Lieutenant, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the question is this. At the very end, they're in the office and they get the phone call, and Batman is asked to run for president for a particular party. They don't say the party, of course. No. Then there's another phone call, and Batman takes that call, and it's the other party making the same pitch. But Batman says, but I already thought you had a declared candidate. And I'm wondering now if you could figure out, based on that, which one called first, which side it was. Because I'm trying to think, 1966, was there already somebody in the running, unless it was Johnson?
It would have had to have been, because although, well, he hadn't decided yet that he wasn't going to run.
Right.
Again, so maybe so. Or maybe we were just reading a little too into it.
Well, yeah, it could be.
But it would have to be Johnson, because in '66, I mean, I would think that was way too early for the Republicans to have their candidate already lined up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess it would be the Republicans called first and then the Democrats called second.
Right.
But I loved Robin's lesson in civics in the tag scene. I thought that was very, very cute.
Oh. I always love the PSAs that we get from Batman, in particular when he's teaching Robin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was fun, because you know what? I would say that when I was a kid watching the show, you know, the whole purpose of Robin in the first place was to appeal to kids, that the kids could sort of identify with Robin,
Mm-hmm.
and it certainly worked for me. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted Robin's costume. I didn't want Batman. I knew I could never be Batman, but I could be, maybe I could be Robin. So, yeah, I love those little things where he would always, give Robin a little, like you said, PSA or a civics lesson or whatever.
All right, let me ask you, because I can say for myself, considering we don't really have much in the way of actual detective work, so there really isn't a need for any of this, but was there anything that stood out in the way of a Bat gadget for you? For this particular episode?
No, because I don't think he used any.
Yeah.
Except I think maybe he used the Batarang at one point.
Yeah.
But no, he there really wasn't any. Except, him using an umbrella as a sword.
As a sword, yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this then. I get a trivia question every episode from the official Batman Batbook by Joel Eisner. Pick up your copy on Amazon.com. Here's your question. On what floor is Commissioner Gordon's office located?
Oh, God. I'm sure that they did it in the elevator scene.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Batman even asks because there's actually a elevator operator.
Oh, boy. I'm going to take a stab and say 13.
You are correct.
Oh, my God. Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
13. Although the building, if you ever see when the Batmobile makes the pull-up, that doesn't look like a 13-story building.
No.
No.
Not at all. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Good.
Boy, I guess those brain cells are still firing. Good, good, good. There's hope for me.
Okay, so now you are Robin the Boy Wonder. You've just watched this episode with Batman. And, to sum it up in one word, and then you can explain it, and if there's anything else you want to add to, our final analysis here. You turn to Batman and you say, holy what?
Holy civics lesson, Batman.
Yeah. So this works for you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I would say the same thing. I wouldn't say that. I would say holy landslide. I mean...
Holy landslide.
Holy landslide. I mean, this episode for me is a winner from beginning to end. I would have to put it up there in my top 5, top 10, of all the Batman episodes. It's one of the most absurd episodes in the sense of Batman and Penguin. Later on we're going to get Surf's Up, Joker's Under, the episode where Batman and Joker enter a surfing competition.
Yeah.
It's so absurd, you can't help but love it just because it's ridiculous. I mean, it's really a stupid episode, but it's so stupid you love it anyway. This isn't stupid. It's just absurd. And it's absurd.
It's absurd, but it's biting.
Yes.
And it's clever.
Yes, it is. It's grounded in that whole message about our political system, and between the absurdity and the message there, it all works well together. And then you add to it, you got tons of guest spots from the 3 news anchors we already talked about. Goon number 1 is Joey Tata from Beverly Hills 90210.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, we've got Paul Revere and the Raiders. We've got Mayor Linseed, of course, making another appearance. We've got James O'Hara, who plays, the Irish cop who's got different names depending on the episode. You've got everything. You've got name dropping of other villains. The only thing missing in this episode is Warden Crichton. This would have made it complete. If we had Warden Crichton there, we would have had the whole current Batman family. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually, my recollections of the show, had kind of been tarnished over the years because, like I said, I haven't watched it in a long time, and I was so heavily steeped, especially during my time at Marvel when I was, following, what DC was doing with the Batman comics, and just my many years as a reader. The comics were so different, the ones that I, read as a kid from the TV show, that I just remembered the show being kind of dopey. And yes, it was dopey on many occasions, as you mentioned. It's very dopey. Surfs Up with the Joker was, But I was very pleasantly surprised by how clever this episode was. I always remembered it. And like I said, my most vivid memory was Batman refusing to kiss the baby. But the rest of it, I was really picked up on just how clever and witty the show could be. And, we were talking about how timely or timeless and whether or not the show still holds up. This one does, in the respect that we're still dealing with so many of the same issues now that they were dealing with back then, which was politicians. You can't trust them, the corruption of the political process. It's all still there. It's all still stuff that we're contending with today. And in that respect, yeah, it's a very eye-opening experience watching this pair of episodes.
I absolutely agree with you. Dead on. And it's kind of sad, too, in a way that we're still dealing with it today.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this episode of the Batcave podcast, Glenn, how can people follow you and your writings and all the things you're doing in your area of the internet universe?
Well, I have a blog that I maintain as often as I can. It's called Glenn Greenberg's Grumblings, and I write about anything having to do with pop culture, whether it's music, movies. I do occasional movie reviews, television. My encounter with George Takei. So mostly pop culture oriented, and the website address is Glenn GLENN Greenberg GREENBERG. So that's the spelling of my name, but it's Glenn Greenberg's Grumblings.blogspot.com. That's where you can get my brilliant insights on what's going on in the world of entertainment.
All right, and I'll definitely put up a link as well in the show notes when this episode is released. Glenn, thank you so much for being here this time around.
This was a pleasure, and I look forward to doing it again.
Well, we definitely will soon when we were talking about the Joker and the Penguin and the giant clam. We've got you lined up for that one.
Oh, boy, I can't wait.
So, folks, that's going to do it then for this episode of the Batcave podcast. Tune in next time.
Next week, Mr. Freeze returns.
But Mr. Freeze has got himself a new face, so we're going to bring in a new face to talk about the new and different Mr. Freeze. Joining me for this episode is Mr. Dan Greenfield of 13thdimension.com. Looking forward to that episode because, I think that Mr. Freeze that we had in the first season was well established, and I don't remember the performances of Otto Preminger, so this is going to be good. So until next time, citizens, thanks so much for listening. Once again, Glenn, thank you so much. Take care, chums.
John, thanks for having me. This was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com, or by phone at 888-866-9010. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com, or through iTunes. The Batcave podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave podcast.
Now that I've resigned in favor of Mayor Linseed, Gotham City will be back in good hands for another 4 years. And if nothing else, Robin got a good lesson in civics.
Oh, I had enough experience to last me forever.
Now, you can never have too much experience in politics, Robin, as many politicians have discovered.
Yeah. Why, yes, he's right here. Batman, for you.
Thank you. Batman, thank you very much. I am flattered that your committee should be interested in me as a presidential candidate for 1968. But I'm afraid my Gotham City duties take precedence. Yes, I will definitely let you know if I change my mind.
Bulging ballot boxes, Batman, that was some offer.
And you ain't even a general, Batman.
Anyway, it was nice of them to call.
Yes. Hold on just a moment. Batman, another call.
Yes, Batman. I'm flattered, gentlemen. But I thought your party had a candidate for 1968.